Hello you guys, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome in general if you're new here. And this channel is all about my motherhood journey and my hopes to help moms through difficult situations or even just really good situations. It's just me sharing my life and sharing my heart. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, so my journey starts back 6 years ago. And so this video I want to talk about breastfeeding, because my first journey with my first son, I breastfed for 2 whole years. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but the journey was really hard. And so I want to talk about it just because I don't feel like people talk about it enough, because I feel like when people say, oh yeah, everybody should breastfeed, it's the best choice for their kid, I'm sitting there going, it's really, really hard. And I only breastfed for 3 months with my second child, which I'll post a whole nother thing about. But I want to talk about the 2-year journey I had with my first son and how we got through so many obstacles together and finally made it happen. I wrote some notes. Well, I say some notes, this is a lot. Maybe I won't say everything. I mentioned in my last video, my baby had severe jaundice. And so when he was born, he was very lazy, he wasn't very active, sleeping all day, which a lot of babies are like that. But as far as like wanting to eat, he did not. I guess my body knew what he needed, because the first 2 days they worked with me with a pump and I was not producing anything. We were trying to make him latch with nipple shields. And finally on day 2, I got some colostrum and a little bit of milk out, and we were able to syringe my son, but he would not latch. Even with the nipple shield or anything, he just would not latch. My mom was there at one point, and I remember when I couldn't produce but just like this much of milk, and I was sobbing. I was starting to crack and bleed, and I wasn't even making much milk, and it was just so painful. My body was like, what is going on? But they made me pump every 2 hours really, until I made some, and we would syringe feed JJ, my oldest, that way. On the way home, when my son was 3 days old and we got through a lot of things, on my way home I picked up a breast pump from the WIC office. So I definitely recommend WIC if you fall into that range where you can get a little bit of help, because at that time we didn't have a whole lot, and so that was super helpful. You can also buy breast pumps, but we borrowed a very good heavy-duty electric pump from WIC, and that thing was like my bestie for 2 years. And so when we got home, my milk supply came in like crazy. I remember leaking everywhere. My husband, Javier, he bought me a Swiffer because he was like, honey, because it hurt so bad to have anything on me. So I was walking around without a shirt, and it was just like all over the floor. It was terrible. I would be so tired and like be dozing off and pumping, and I would have 8-ounce baby bottles and fill up both of them, and my husband would have to be like waking me up, and they were overflowing 8-ounce bottles. Like I overproduced to the point where it was uncomfortable. I was hurting. He finally was able to drink about 2.5 ounces at a time, and he stayed at 2.5 ounces for a really long time, and I just exclusively bottle fed because we were not able to latch and have that connection for a while. And then at 6 weeks of just pumping and bottle feeding, and him not being able to keep up with me, and me feeling like I was pumping like my life away, and I was guzzling body armor drinks and water and trying to eat healthy, and it was just like, it was a lot. But I just remember one night I went to bed with a really sore like lump in my breast, and I tried to do what I can and massage it and pump and everything. I did what I could, but I was exhausted. The baby was sleeping, and people said sleep when the baby sleeps. I was like, okay, I'll wake up in the morning, and throughout the night I'll pump on that side. whatever. I woke up at 4 or 5 in the morning and I felt like I had the flu plus a really, really huge, sore, engorged breast. And it was hot to the touch and everything. It was awful. And I remember I had fever, chills. I even vomited, like just the whole thing gave me nausea. And my husband had to work that day because he had taken off some time when I had the baby just like a month earlier. So I was like, no, I'll be fine. I think I could get my mom to come over or something. And so I was at home for a little while with the baby, just like totally feeling like I had caught the worst crud on earth. And the fever got to 101 and I called my OB and she prescribed me a breastfeeding safe antibiotic. I was able to go to my pharmacy and get that, but I remember being in so much pain. What helped me was putting a hot/warm rag on the area that was engorged and hurting the most and just pumping, usually on a pretty high volume, which I was still cracked and still just really in a lot of pain. And after a few days of having the antibiotics, it all went away, but that was so painful. I cannot even explain it. But after that happened, I really got a little bit more adamant about trying to latch him. And when he was 2 months old, we had his 2-month shots, and he was crying inconsolably and he had diarrhea after his shots. They never agreed with my oldest. I don't know. My second child never had any issues. Could have been because he was premature, just really small. But when he got his 2-month shots and he was inconsolable, I brought him home that day, sat in a rocking chair, and he latched for the first time. And it was his 2-month appointment, so it was give or take a couple days from being 2 months. But the sigh of relief that I didn't have to carry my pump everywhere and drag at least a hand pump when I went with me everywhere. And the judgment that some moms gave me, like some of the older moms that were just like, oh, we're in public, just whip it out and it's not a big deal. Well, he didn't latch and we just had to bottle feed. And so I would literally have to sit there and pump it like on the fly and give it to him. And there was some people in my life that were like, are you seriously carrying a pump with you everywhere? And so, yes, I seriously was. But after 2 months, I did not have to do that anymore. I latched him more than I breastfed, but I did both. And so it was really nice for the night feeds to not have to get up, go pump, and then come back to him with a bottle. I was able to kind of just nurse him on whatever side felt the most full at night and then go back to bed, pump in the morning, like a really good pump. And so that was great. The great thing is I did not have any more issues. We pumped and breastfed on and off for the next 22 months. The only time I had an issue was about a month before stopping breastfeeding. It was Christmas, and it was Christmas 2020. And for whatever reason, he was just cluster feeding, just wanting to feed, which I guess it wasn't cluster feeding. It was more like clingy toddler syndrome because he was like 1 3/4. And so he was just being really clingy that day, and we had a little time where we were at home. And so I was just letting him latch and just be comforted with me, maybe overstimulation. But I remember going that night to my aunt's house and getting mastitis in the middle of a family function, just feeling like I had a fever, have a wave of nausea hit me. And by the time I got home and in the bathtub, I could not get myself back out. My husband had to put the baby to bed, or he was almost 2 at that point. He had to put him to sleep, and I was laying in the bathtub, already drained all the water out of it by the time my husband came in there and like basically put me in the bed, sick as a dog. And the next morning he took me for the antibiotics again, and so I went through the mastitis twice, and I cannot recommend enough first of all, antibiotics. Some people, I have watched a few videos before making this video myself of people being able to remedy it at home. That's so great. I'm so glad you could. But I got so incredibly sick when I had mastitis that I could not have even made it without antibiotics. So I do recommend, if you are having a fever and it is totally knocking you off your feet and you have a kid to take care of, which is the whole point, mastitis. So really, seriously, get medical help. Do what you can from home to help yourself, but please don't let yourself suffer too long before getting some medical help, because along with the antibiotics, just that hot rag on yourself and just pump, 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 or feed. But in my case, I was usually bleeding, so I didn't feed my child with that. But anyways, I just wanted to highlight that anybody who is really, really wanting to breastfeed and they're going through some issues with latching and pumping and mastitis and all this, it is so worth it. And with my second child, like I said, I was only able to breastfeed for 3 months, but I will get into that story. I'm kind of trying to do all my stories in order for how it happened in sequence to my life, just to share with you my journey in order, because I have some really cool things going on right now with starting to homeschool my oldest and just getting into a lot of fun things as they grow. And so I want to do all the baby stuff first and then get into toddlering because, you know, it's all a different stage of life and it's all super fun. But I thank you for tuning in. If you have made it this far, thank you, and I appreciate you, and we'll talk soon. I really hope that you guys can leave me some comments, tell me about your experiences, and just subscribe and stay around for more mom content. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.